Hello, everybody. Welcome to a very special Global Voices. Now, some of you may not know this, but this is full right here because of COVID protocols. We've had to cut it off at a certain number, and I only mention that because I just want you to know that this one, not surprisingly to me, filled up very quickly because of our very special guest that we have today. It's my privilege to introduce to you Teal Cuellar. Of course, most of you know her, which is why you're here. Her daughter Mika is here today. Great to have you with us as well. Teal is a woman who I have come to respect and admire. She's one of our mission certificate students. She is kind, gentle, loving, intelligent, and she has a wisdom about her that shows that she has a significant amount of experiences both in life in general and cross-cultural missions in particular. And so it's my privilege to introduce Teal to you today. Please
come on. Okay, hold on. I have to turn this on. Bradley told me to. Okay, there we go. Can everybody hear me? Hi, welcome. Thank you guys for coming. And thank you, Mika, even though I made you come here. So welcome to Global Voices today. I'm going to be talking about Amistad, which is the mission that I originally went down to Bolivia to serve with. Amistad in English translates to friendship. And I went down there in January of 2004, sorry, to work at I can't just say orphanage. I'm going to explain a little bit about how it's set up. Amistad has grown since I was there, but it was the way that it is structured, the children's village, as they call it, is 10 different houses. Each house has a mom, and up to 10 children living in it, boys and girls, up through the age, this has changed again. When I got there, girls were staying there until they were about 14. While I was there, a girls' youth house was created so that the older girls, before they hit 18, were moved to a youth house. The boys already had one youth house, but it was full, so they created another one while I was there. Since then, that has grown. So each house has a different name. Some of them are named after saints. Some of them are named, Jared, my child's waving at you. Would you please come sit next to her? Some of them are named after places. My church here in Birmingham recently just adopted one of the houses that's named Copacabana, which is a lake in Bolivia. I know everyone knows the song and thinks it's in Brazil, but there is a lake in Bolivia. It's the highest lake in the world. So each of those houses are set up that way. And then also there are a number of tias, which are aunts, who are other women employed at Amistad, and they rotate between houses. And so they can be used, if a mom has a day off, they come in and take over the house. What is very important about Amistad as compared to other orphanages in specifically Cochabamba, but in Bolivia, is they keep biological siblings together whenever possible. And that is no easy feat. When I was there, I'm just going to kind of tell y'all some different stories about when I was there, but when I was there, there were, I want to say it was 2 little girls who were in the orphanage, and they had a brother, but the brother was still living with the grandparents in the village where they came from. The grandfather, I think it was, passed, and I was taken with some of the higher-ups of the orphanage, and we went out to this village with the girls to literally retrieve their brother because the grandmother had said, I can't take care of him by myself. And this was a village that was remote, and they did not speak Spanish. They spoke one of the native Bolivian indigenous languages. In the region where we were in Bolivia was mainly Quechua, which you guys might have heard of. So those are the kind of things that Amistad was doing. The children at Amistad, even though it is called an orphanage, not all of them are true orphans. Many children in Bolivia have been taken away from their parents, either because their parents are mentally unfit, like literally living in a mental asylum, or they are living under a bridge with their families. It is a problem across Bolivia. So just to kind of give an idea, because lots of people, when I told them I was moving to Bolivia, thought I was moving to Africa. It's not true. My husband was frequently asked if he was from Africa. No. So Bolivia, as you can see, is in the middle of South America. It is one of 2 landlocked countries in South America. Bolivia used to have a seaport, but it was lost in a war to Chile many years ago. But they still have a Day of the Sea where they commemorate like that war, and they want to like get the seaport back. And this is hundreds of years ago. Actually, Mika's first ever parade, she was in the parade that our school had to send kids to for Day of the Sea. It was quite adorable. Anyway, so that's where Bolivia is. And the population of Bolivia is around 8 million. In Bolivia, there are about 30,000 Bolivians living in Arlington, Virginia. But besides those, there's about 8 million, 9 million people in Bolivia. Here's Bolivia itself. We lived in Cochabamba. So each of these is called a department, kind of like our counties. And Cochabamba is the name of the department that we lived in. And then Cochabamba is the capital city of that department. It's in the middle of the Andes Mountains. That's where I was living. That's where Amistad Mission is. In the department of Cochabamba as well is the Amazon Rainforest Basin. So from the city where we were, my husband or I driving 2.5 hours, you could be in the rainforest. If you took a bus, it was about 4. You also see La Paz over there. That is where flights fly into usually. That's the highest, one of the highest airports in the world. The highest one is in like Nepal, but we're the second highest. And then Santa Cruz is the lowest, as in sea level, department in Bolivia, and it is also the most international one in the sense that many international companies are there. La Paz is where the embassies and the government is run and everything, but most international businesses are in Santa Cruz. So kind of give y'all an idea of the country. This is a view of Cochabamba. Yeah. It is, as you see the mountains in the background, it's actually surrounded by mountains. And it sits in a valley. So many things that are from Cochabamba are actually called del Valle, of the valley. There's a juice company called Del Valle. There is a university called Universidad del Valle because it's of the valley. So that is the city shot, one city shot of Cochabamba. It's huge. This is the teleférico. This is cable cars, literally, that go from the city leading up to the Christ statue. This Christ statue is 3 feet taller than the one in Brazil. The joke is the Bolivians could not beat the Brazilians in soccer, so they built a bigger statue. So that is Jesus. He is kind of on, well, you can't even say the outskirts of the city anymore because it's almost part of the city now. But the first school that I taught at when I started teaching in Bolivia, from my classroom window, I could look out and I saw the profile of his hand in like the back. I mean, I was like way on the outskirts of town. Here is another view of him looking over. That's the lake that is very polluted. Don't ever drink anything from there or eat anything from there. But as you can see, he's up, kind of above, but is looking over the city. And the reason there are holes in him is because on Sundays you can actually go into the Jesus statue and climb the stairs to the top and look out of him from all those different holes. I've never done it. My child has. Okay, so Bolivia. People are like, oh, it's Catholic. Well, guess what? One of the 4 biggest Mormon temples in the world, right there. Cochabamba, Bolivia. The thing on top is a solid gold angel with a trumpet pointing towards heaven. From a distance away, though, it looks like he has a gun. So we're like, Anyway. But this is on a huge plot of land that is one of the best looking plots of land in the city. The reason that I bring this up is because a lot of what I was doing in Bolivia when I was a missionary, and I'm going back there for my CCMP and will be doing when I'm there again, is looking at teaching the truth of Jesus, basically. Bolivia is a Catholic country, majority Catholic country, but there is a lot of syncretism going on, and I'm going to get into that. But then you also have Mormons. There are many Mormon churches, I guess they're called, throughout the city as well. But this is one of the biggest temples. And so the number of people who rang my doorbell all the time, it was really bad. My husband, we got really annoyed with them because we were like, we don't have church till 10 o'clock on Sunday. Why are you ringing my bell at 7:30 on a Sunday morning, right? So he sometimes took the approach of debating with them, as in like, all right, let's have a conversation about this. My husband grew up in an evangelical, non-denominational church, and so he would debate with them. And one time, he told me this story that he was like, this is how these people, they know how to get you. It was two guys, and one time they were like, oh, well, and they didn't really know what to say. They're like, oh, well, can we come back in a couple days? And he was like, sure. They sent back two of the most beautiful women he had ever seen who were gringos to come talk to him about how their faith was true instead of the two men returning. So, true story, all right? So anyway, that's one of the things going on specifically in Cochabamba, and Kyle, you can attest to, I'm sure that's going on in La Paz too.
I didn't see it as much, but
yeah, it's there. It's there. So I mentioned the native religions. This is really intense. So in Cochabamba in August, every August, there is a festival and a holiday called the Virgen de Urcopina. Virgen means virgin, Mother Mary. Urcopina is a mountain, hill, something, in Quillacollo, which is like right next to Cochabamba. It's like saying Birmingham and Homewood, for example. And it's a 3-day festival when people literally will carry rocks up to the Virgin, and they leave them there because they are leaving their burdens with her. And then also, and they walk for, I'm talking miles. And then also there is a day of parades and dances. In the parades are dances. This is one of those. This is the Tinkle Dance. Okay, these are the women. The men and women dress differently. This dance reenacts a warrior fight scene where villages would come together and fight, and the men would circle each other. And then if a man went down, the women would have to go and pull him out. And you tried to pull out your own person before the other tribe's women got him, because then there was a whole big clash of having to get him back. The men have hard hats that they dance in, and they bang them on the ground. So, but the colors are beautiful. All the costumes are very beautiful. But this was one of them that also they kind of called on different Mother Earth kind of spirits to help them with. And so this is where we start seeing the syncretism come in. Here's the Virgin of Urcopina with a banner of the Bolivian flag across her being carried, and you see all the different people around, they are also dancing. This is another dance done. This is called Caporales. These guys are imitating the Spanish conquistadors. That's why they have a whip. The side of their boots have bells on them. And they do a dance kind of showing how they were taking over pretty much, bringing in, which ties into bringing in the Catholic religion. And these are the women who dance in that dance as well. They're short, their skirts are very short, and they're doing a different dance, and they go back and forth. This is another one, again, showing just kind of the artwork and the colorfulness, but it's another one of the dances that does involve kind of all of these pagan spirits calling on to come help with whatever it is. Each dance had a different purpose. So, Amistad. I wasn't able to find a picture of one dance that's called the Diablada, which is the devil dance, and it's literally people dressed as a devil and an angel, and they dance back and forth, and it's like a battle. But Amistad is where I was. This is the logo of them now. I have a video that I kind of want to show about who they are. It is a video that is like sent out to sponsors, so there is kind of talking about sponsoring. But, hang on, I can't do this. There we go. It shows a lot of just how the orphanage is set up and what they do. So as you saw, there was like a family style meal. They eat breakfast, lunch, dinner. Sometimes lunches are kind of broken up because of the way the school schedule is there. Some kids go to school in the mornings. Some go to school in the afternoon. Also, a lot of them who are a little bit older before they move out, they start going to technical school. When I was there was a one young man, boy, who was going to, what's it in English? Reposteria. Learning how to bake cakes, whatever that's.
Bakery?
Yeah, bakery. Okay, yeah, culinary school, yeah. And then there was somebody else who was learning how to be a mechanic. There was a young lady who was going to learn to be a seamstress. So those are the technical schools that also are an option for many of them. And, it's interesting what Chris, the director, he mentioned that a lot of the children who were there, if they weren't there, they would be dedicated to a life of crime. So when I was living there, I lived in the orphanage. There are 10 houses for orphans, but then they have a couple extra houses, one where the tias, the aunts, live. And I was in that house in a guest room that they had for people who came to live and work at the orphanage. I'd been there for a few months. I went down there and I knew no one. A friend of mine from Birmingham who I'd grown up with had been there before, and she put me in touch with a couple of missionaries who were around our parents' age who were down there through the Anglican Church. So I would go with them to the Anglican Church on Sundays. And one night we're all there, and the next morning somebody says something about one of our offices were broken into. Now, third world countries have walls or gates around every house, every building, whatever. There are bars on every window, but an office had been broken into, and they figured out that it was some of the kids who had left the orphanage and gone to join a street gang. And they knew the guy who was running the street gang because he apparently had it out for Amistad and started trying to poach the teenage boys. A few nights later, we're all outside. It's not lights out time or anything, and the entire orphanage, the whole land just goes dark. The kids, at this man's prodding, came up and flipped the lights, and they tried to jump the fence and come in and steal more stuff. So at that point, I was like, I am not going to live at this orphanage. I will come here every day, but I just don't feel safe. So through the friends who I had made, I ended up moving in with Frank Lyons, who some of y'all know, and lived at their house because they had a guest house for the Anglican Church. And so I rented a room from them for the rest of my time there, and I would just go up to the orphanage every day. But I found out from this experience that it was not just one or two guys who had ended up leaving. It was kind of like 4 or 5, and they were coming back also. They knew where their friends went to school, and so they were waiting for them on the sidewalk outside of school, trying to convince them to leave the orphanage and come join them in this life of street crime, because they weren't like, nobody had to tell them what to do. They could do what they want. They had more money than they did living at the orphanage. And so to them, it was all cool and fun. And it was basically, they were just living a life as a street gang, living on the streets, literally. I have a few pictures of some stuff of Amistad. They have a thriving vegetable garden. And this is a little girl that, is this Noelia? This is my daughter Brianna's prayer partner also, by the way. So anyway, but she's in the vegetable garden. So this is at the Children's Village. And you saw it there, it said for over 30 years. So Amistad was started way back in 1990 by a Trappist monk who actually has connections to Birmingham. And it's so weird. Anyway, and he went down to Cochabamba and was in Cochabamba seeing kind of what was going on. Then he went out to a very remote village that you can only get to by a dirt road called Aramasi, and he started living with the people there, and they came to him for help with stuff. And then he just kind of felt led more by the Spirit to like, okay, I'm not supposed to just live in seclusion here. And he thought of all the children, and so he started Amistad, talking to other people in the States. But so this is the vegetable garden. There is one of, she's actually from my church, but she also is on the board of Amistad. And that's the gardener at Amistad. And you can see, as I was talking about in the background, a wall. So there is a wall around there. And of course, from the picture, it doesn't look that high, but it is. And there's barbed wire around the top of it as well. These are a couple of the other children with papayas. And then in the background, that's what the houses look like. As you see, they're just brick houses, corrugated tin roofs, one level, and you can see the bars that are on the windows. But this is on the grounds of the orphanage. And there's one of the typical like in-house meals. This looks like some of the older siblings have probably come back. But so you can see, again, just the brick inside, very simple. There's no central heat or central air in Bolivia. Doesn't exist, too expensive, and they don't have the technology. So that is a kind of family-style meal. These are just 3 young women from there. These are school uniforms. They look like they're wearing lab coats, but this is the uniform for most of the public schools in Bolivia is just this white coat, and they have a tie, and the ties differs depending on the school. The girls usually have to wear skirts, and the guys have to wear dark-colored pants. So Aramasi, these are some of the indigenous women who live out in Aramasi. Amistad still, if you come down to visit, they still take people out there because they are still involved with this community. These are people who, they speak Quechua, they don't speak Spanish, but Amistad has set up a clinic out there. And then also these women make all of these things by hand, and then they also sell them when people come to visit. So we have lots of weavings and things like that. But these are some of the typical indigenous women. In Bolivia, you can tell where a woman is from, the region, based on the kind of hat she's wearing. So those are from Cochabamba. People from La Paz, they look like 10-gallon hats. And then there's other parts of the country where they look like that hat that she has, but it's smaller. So it's one way to tell. You can also tell by the length of their skirt. These women are sitting, so it's hard to tell. You can tell by the length of the indigenous women's skirts as to what part of Bolivia they're from. This is also Aramasi out in the, and they also, it's a village, so they, farm their own food. And so this is also, though, part of what Amistad has to do with, is helping with kind of the planning and things like that. And here's another woman from Aramasi with her child. Her child is literally tied to her back with that cloth, which is called an aguayo. And they take them and they kind of burrito wrap their kids and then sling them on their backs. And that's how they carry them around. I've actually seen children who are about 4 or 5 carrying around their infant siblings because the parents are working or, farming, whatever. But what's also interesting to note is you see she's in a doorway, but on this side you see the mud. Well, it's because there's mud houses out there. And you see the beams that are kind of exposed behind, and those are literally just logs that they cut and use to build homes with. This is just a picture of 2 of the orphans. One is graduating, and the other one actually was one orphan that I dealt with when I was there. She was 14. Her name is Mercedes, and she grew up when I was there. As I mentioned, the girls' youth house was started, and they had a director for it, and when she would have nights off, I would go and spend the night in this house and be like the one in charge. I was 23, y'all. This is not a smart decision. I was the one in charge of literally 8 teenage girls from the ages of 14 to 17, because when they turn 18, they make sure they can have jobs, and then they're kind of, they don't just throw them out on the street. As they said, they make sure they can sustain themselves. But Mercedes was one of the girls who was in the youth house when I was there. We had lots of conversations. She was a great girl. I loved her. She was awesome. And then a couple years ago, well, now, okay, I've been here 3.5. So let's say about 5 years ago, I was at a school event, and she walks up to me, and she's like, Teal. And I was like, oh, my goodness. And she's doing fine. She has a job as a nanny. She finished school. She's a Christian. And so it was just really great for me to see something of somebody who I had known as a teenager, now in the adult world, working. And she was there as a nanny with a family who attended the school that I ended up teaching at. So that was really kind of enjoyable to run into her years later and be like, wow. And you almost didn't even recognize her too. I was like, gosh, you grew up. But so those are kind of all the photos I have. I just kind of want to tell you a little bit more of some of what it's like, what it was like living there and being, working in the orphanage. So I mentioned about the kind of the syncretic part of the Catholic religion that is there. In the Via, they are being raised as Catholics, but they use the catechesis of the Good Shepherd, which is teaching them. And then also they, they do Bible studies, Bible reading with the youth. That was something that I did do while I was there as well. I did Bible studies with the youth. And that's important to note because the Catholic religion, like the moms and the tias who come in to work, they're older. They already have their preconceived notions. They think things like, if you plant this plant next to your door, it will absorb all the bad spirits before they go into your house. When my husband and I went to buy a house, we were told by the owners, this plant right here, don't take it out because it'll capture all the bad spirits. And really it works because one night this was happening and we prayed, and then the next day the plant had shriveled up. So it caught the bad spirit. Those are the kinds of things that people in Bolivia believe on a regular basis. I mentioned to you earlier Mother Earth, the story where I said I went with the people out to the village to collect the little boy to bring him back to live with his sisters in the orphanage. While we were there, we were invited some food and some Sprite and whatever. Well, very typical, before you drink anything, you pour a little bit out on the ground to Mother Earth. It's your offering to Mother Earth, and then you drink. And we're talking about people who are also Catholic. In Cochabamba, the first Friday of every month, they do something called coa, when they burn this stuff that smells absolutely horrible. If you have a business or you have a piece of land you're about to build on or whatever, you burn it with paper money or other things that you want to have come to you. And here's the crazy thing. I have a plot of land. I'm going to go build a house. I'm going to get my Catholic priest to come down and bless it, and then we're going to light the koa with him standing right there. And it's literally all about pagan spirits, getting rid of them, and the priest is standing there blessing it and is a part of it. So that's the reality of the Catholic religion in Bolivia. On the flip side of that, as I mentioned, you have Mormons, you have Jehovah's Witnesses everywhere, you have evangelical Christians, then you also have the ones that are, to quote my husband, a cult, which I know, Dr. Parks, that's the wrong word to use, but I'm repeating it from somebody from there, okay? I mean, where the women are not allowed to go to church unless they're in a long skirt. Not long pants, long skirt. And some of them even have the women have to cover their heads. So you have a very wide range of different kind of branches of Christianity coming into Bolivia. And then when you're dealing with, these orphans who are coming in from homes, they may or may not have been around parents who were even nominally Catholic. They might be coming from, there was one little 2-year-old, no, she was 3 when I was there. She got so angry one time, something happened. Her lips literally turned purple. She was like, and I found out from the mom of the house where she was like, her mother is mentally ill and is living in a mental institution. And so we have to be very careful because in the short time that she had lived with her mother, she had been, abused because her mother didn't know how to take care of her. But also they were concerned about watching for signs of mental illness in this child. So there's a lot of very, traditional beliefs, I guess is a way to put it, that it's hard to fight against just on a daily basis. And I saw this even within the family. Like my husband's family was majority Catholic. He was not. But these were things that we, fought against daily with them. Like, no, we don't, worship the Virgin Mary. It's not a thing. And so in the Via, they are teaching them, they are raising them up in Catholic in that culture, but it is a very Christ-centered Catholicism. It looks very different from the typical Catholicism you will see in the country. And what's really interesting is I mentioned the 10 houses. All the houses in the Via have sponsors from churches in the United States. Every single church that sponsors a house at Amistad is either ACNA or Episcopal. They're all ACNA or Episcopal. So, yeah, that's kind of what I have. I don't know if you guys have any questions. I have tons of stories. I can just stand up here and tell stories, but I don't want to just talk the whole time. So does anybody have questions or anything you want to know about? I was with Amistad officially for a year. And then I went back a little bit after because I was there for a year and then I came back to the States for a year. And then when I went back, I went up to visit a little bit. And Since then, it's changed and grown a lot. So they have like different directors come in. And then also in the video, it mentioned they have homes now for families in crisis. That's something new that did not exist when I was there. And they work literally, they identify families in crisis and bring them to a center and teach them how to parent, live together and whatever, so they do not become a broken home. But so officially, I was there with Amistad for a year, 13 and a half years. Yes. So so the woman who was in the video, Kelly Halsey, she actually is a member of the Advent. And so she goes down there. Okay, we had a conversation because we're actually going to be there at the same time, our summer, their winter. She goes down there June and July, and different groups from around the United States will go down for a week, 2 weeks. It kind of depends on what you want. I'm going to go down there for 6 weeks this summer to work with the women and be doing Bible studies and things like that. But I know from my church here, St. Mary's, they're planning a trip for about a week to 10 days because it takes about 24 hours to get there. But yes, there are short-term opportunities. And their website, actually, you can click there and there's a whole thing about how you can go for short-term, what you need to do, things like that. COVID. So Bolivia took a very extreme approach and shut down everything. You were not allowed outside of your house. Keep in mind that in a room this size, they could probably get about 6 apartments out of it. So that's the size homes that many people were living in, and a lot of them had children. It shut down depending on the last 2 digits of your carnet, which is like your social security number. You were allowed to leave your house between 8 and 12 one day a week on a specified day to go grocery shopping. And other than that, you were in your house. That was it. Because it is a third world country, hospitals had 9 ICU beds max. I think in the entire city of Cochabamba, which you saw the shot of, I think there's like 10 ventilators. They had people dying in their homes and on the street. So schools all went virtual. As far as I know, at the VIA, the kids are all still virtual. Luckily, they live in a place that has, as you saw, those open spaces within their fence, so they have places they can go. But even the school that I taught at has been virtual, and so everything is online. My stepson is in vet school. Most of his stuff is currently still virtual because of COVID. Right now, as it stands, so nobody was able to go down there at all. They weren't accepting any visitors to the VIA. Currently, they are not allowing children from the outside to go into the VIA, but adults can. That will probably change between now and June. But it's been a challenge, especially like I mentioned, one of those pictures was my youngest daughter's prayer partner. Mika has a prayer partner as well. And usually what we do is send cards back and forth for Easter, Christmas, birthdays. There's no reliable mail system in Bolivia. They shut the post office down while I was there. But usually it was people who were going back and forth, mission teams or whatever, and that hasn't been able to happen. So it's put a strain on a lot of what's going on in the country as a general. And so they went into lockdown, and then they came out of it, and then they went back into it. So it's been tough for them. U.S. partners, pretty much. I think as far as the Bolivian government is concerned, they get something from the government because they are recognized as an orphanage. I know that some of the children that are at Amistad have come from other Bolivian state-run like orphanage/hospitals, basically for younger children. But they know what Amistad does, so they will take them, but they do not get a ton of support from the Bolivian government. Most of their support does come from either U.S. churches who have adopted a house or people who just want to give money, things like that. So Chris, the guy on the video, he's like the president of the board here, and then they have a director of the orphanage, Lila, who is actually in Cochabamba on the ground. So, but most of it comes from the U.S. because Bolivia just does not have kind of the social setup that we do here for like, homeless people who, as you saw, live under the poverty line. They're not getting help. They just don't have that. Yes, Josiah.
How involved in
Right. So when I was there, me and then the missionary couple I talked about, we were involved there. The Lions went up there. Bishop Frank has a story about praying over somebody there. Now Because of COVID, again, lots of people have left, because when I left Bolivia and the Lions had left Bolivia, it was a foreign national. She was from the States, who became kind of the deacon of the church there, and there was a new bishop who came in, but since she's also left and moved. So I know she was involved with it, but as of today, I'm not too sure how involved it is, because also the Anglican church in Cochabamba itself is very small. There's only one church, and that's a huge city, so it's not very big. But, I know Shawnee went with me once, and the two missionaries I spoke about, we went up because there was a girl at the orphanage who was acting crazy, for lack of a better term, and she was possessed. And I remember being in the room praying, and one of the other missionaries was like, the demon has left her. This woman had vision. She was like, the demon has left her and is currently trying to go into one of us. And we were all standing there praying. And at the end, she's like, it went back into her. And this girl was picked on by the other orphans, but she would have moments where she would just fall on the ground and look like she was having a seizure, but she was possessed. So, yeah, so we were there, but as of today, I'm not sure exactly. So, yeah, witchcraft, definitely. What I mentioned with the Pachamama, pouring it out, then the koa is part of witchcraft. All houses, yeah, pretty much every house I ever went into, including the house that we bought, had like a shrine built in the corner. Because again, there's cement walls going around. So in the corner of your cement wall, there would be a shrine built, and there was your virgin. And but it was not just straight like, oh, I'm just going to pray. Like, there was always some witchcraft involved. My husband took a sledgehammer to our shrine when they moved out and we moved in. That was the first thing we did. He just took a sledgehammer and tore it down. We were like, nope. But yeah, there's tons of witchcraft. I want to say the koa is one. Oh, you can actually go to the open air market in Cochabamba, which is about the size, it's like a square mile, and there's a witchcraft section. And you can go buy, pig fetuses floating in something, or go buy whatever, and you can literally, my brother-in-law took my brother down there like he needed any encouragement. But, and he walked through there and he was like, that's one of the scariest places I've ever been. But there's a whole witchcraft section of the market where you can go buy whatever you need. So, yeah, Rebecca. Okay, so let me elaborate a little bit. His nuclear family was not. His extended family was. But in Bolivia, your extended family is almost like your nuclear family because you do just so much together. His family was also weird, quote unquote, that they all didn't live within 3 minutes of each other or whatever. So his family, it wasn't that big of a deal. As far as I know, I think a lot of your answer depends on how educated your family is. To give a very simple answer, it really depends on how much education your family has. There are people who, they never learn to read. Like, they basically barely make it through whatever. The government requires you to go to school for a certain age. But there were kids living in a dirt lot, in a dirt home, a mud home, around the corner from my house, who didn't go to school. The government required it, but was the government going to pay for their uniforms or their pens or their pencils or their paper? No. But when you have other families, like I taught at a private international school. I had business leaders' kids in my school who were nationals. We also had lots of internationals, but nationals. These are business leaders who are international business people. For them, it wasn't probably such a big deal because their kids were coming here to go to college and they were converting. I had one student, I told Dr. Parks this, who actually was a Hare Krishna, which I had never even heard of until I was in Bolivia. So there's that. He came to the States for college, and he's no longer Hare Krishna. Like, he's converted, and his family is okay with it. So again, but I think it depends on the level of education. Okay, so Hare Krishna is, I'm still not entirely sure. It is a branch of, it's Hinduism, right? Yeah, a branch of Hinduism where I'm going to go with what I knew from my student and his family. They prayed 5 times a day. He and his teenage sisters would get up before sunrise along with their parents, had a prayer mat, prayed 5 times a day, did not eat meat, did not even eat eggs. They were vegan. He had a very weird haircut that I don't know if as actually part of Hare Krishna, but he did. Most of his head was shaved, but the top of his head was in like a little knot kind of thing. That was his hairstyle, and it was because he said he was a Hare Krishna, but his father did not have that hairstyle, and I think it was probably a difference between a child and an adult. But it is a sect of Hinduism, so take that. Yeah. That's Hare Krishna. Sorry about that. Yeah, Jared. There's some food that I miss. But I think that I think one thing possibly would be just like the regular family get-togethers, because family was closer. Now, my husband's family was gigantic on my father-in-law's side. He was like one of 13 kids, so that's a lot of people. On my mother-in-law's side, there were fewer children, but a good number of them lived in Cochabamba, so every week or every other week there was a big family gathering. In the States, like my mother is the only one of her siblings who lives in Alabama, so that is different. But at the same time, that also goes, it's like Thursday and it's somebody's birthday. We have to celebrate it Thursday. We can't do it Friday. And I was like, I'm not going. I got 2 kids. Like, I got to work. No, I'm not going. So it's kind of mix and match. But life in any third world country, but especially in Bolivia, is hard. Like, you can't pay your bills online. You have to go stand in line at a bank. The trash truck may or may not show up. So you can go take your trash to the dumpsters that are wherever, or it shows up when you're not at home because you're working and you can't leave your trash out, kind of thing. Can't flush toilet paper. Don't drink the water out of the faucet. So it's pretty difficult. The people are great, most of them. There are obviously exceptions. We all know them. But the people are great. The country's beautiful. I mean, you're in the Andes Mountains and you're close to the Amazon rainforest basin. So it's beautiful, but it's really hard to live there. And as I've mentioned before, being a single white woman with 2 girls, it was not safe. Plus the fact, even when my husband was alive, people assumed that we had money because of the way that I look. And we're like, we're both working here. There's no money, there's no income coming from wherever. So that's so that sometimes made things harder for me because of the way I look.
Thanks.
All right.
Thanks everybody for coming. Thank you so
Thank
much.
you.